In today's video, I am going to unbox this HENG'S roof vent, and I am going to install it in my van, which I use in the summertime to camp in sometimes when I'm not going long enough to make it worthwhile to haul my pop-up camper. Did a little research around, looking at some different roof vents. This is the one I just decided to buy myself. We'll see how it works. I paid $130.78 in June of 2020 for this, with the Canadian taxes of $19.62, and the whole thing came to $150.40. So I'm going to install it in the roof of my van and show you how to set it up. I will put a link down below this video to Amazon, where you can purchase this unit if you decide you want to. Okay, let's see what we have in here. Oh, this is a pretty big vent. That should let a lot of air flow in my small Ford Freestar van. Look at the underside of it. Okay. This unit opens up pretty wide. It's got the crank handle here. Hopefully you can see that. Just crank this open. As I say, that should be a fair amount of airflow. Let's go right to the max. Yeah. Alright. Crank her back down. And there we have our two power wires. The instructions to install the vent are on the box itself, and there's a template here. You can see the dotted lines, so we're going to cut that out, and we'll use that to mark the spot we're going to install the vent. And it specifically says here, cut along the inside of the template line. Here's the interior of the van that I'm going to install the vent in. I'm going to give you a little disclaimer here. I paid $600 for this van 3 years ago, and I probably put about somewhere between 50 and 60,000 miles on it. So this van obviously owes me nothing. So if you have an expensive vehicle, you are going to maybe want to reconsider. If you're cutting a big hole in your roof, this is just my project. Now, the instructions for the vent specifically say to install on a flat surface and avoid ribs. As you can see here, I'm not going to be able to avoid that because I want to put it back here in the rear of the vehicle, and I'm just going to take my chances with it. I'm going to use the caulking to seal it up and some putty, but just want you to think about the scenario before you install it in your van. I got some limitations here. Originally I thought of putting it towards the front, but there's a DVD player up here and that type of thing. So I'm going to install it back here. So back towards the rear of the van, I cut myself a little exploratory hole here. I've also popped this out, and I just taken a flex tool. It generally has a mirror on it, but I took the mirror off. You just need something to kind of explore around. Again, this roof vent talks about installing it from the top, which is a great way to do it if you're putting it in a camper trailer, which is what they're referring to in the instructions. But anyway, I can see I can go that far in any direction. So this is a good place for me to start. I'm going to start, as I said, kind of in reverse from the instructions, because they talk about drilling down, which totally makes sense, except in my case I don't want to drill down and hit something like these vents or something along those lines. I got to drill up, and that'll give me a reference outside on the roof. As with most jobs that you go to do, you're going to run into something you didn't expect, and I ran into one here. I never thought of the ribs that run from side to side on a vehicle, and I was going to give a big disclaimer: don't cut into these. It actually has to do with the structural strength of the vehicle, but I cut my big space out here anyway because I was going to do it. However, as I continued on, I pulled down the ceiling, and as you can see down there, there's another rib. There's multiple ribs going from side to side of the vehicle. I measured the distance to that rib, and it's 19 inches. And our roof vent is just under 14. So there's ample room for me to put it in up here and not have to cut this rib. But I wanted to make sure I pointed this out to you in case you're doing a similar type job or something. Keep in mind these size fans are generally for camper trailers. I also have an issue here. I drilled that pilot hole before, and I'll have to put some epoxy or something in there. So what I got is a big hole that won't be necessary and a hole drilled in the roof. Because I'm doing it from the inside, I find it hard to use that template. So what I've done is I've taken the garnish and I just put a couple little screws to keep it in place. Then I'm going to mark it out with my pen, cut it out with my box cutter, and hopefully we'll have a bit more luck this time. The second hole I cut was much more successful. You can see here, just nothing but the roof of the vehicle, no ribs. I even managed to cut a square section and keep it that way in case I try to kind of cover that up a little bit or whatever. There was an extra layer of insulation I had to cut, but that did not matter. There's our roof. And it's starting to get late. I think I'll pick this up tomorrow. Still in the interior of the vehicle here, I've reversed the garnish. I put it in the way it's going to actually be installed, pushed it up against the roof, and hopefully you can see those marks. I've marked out with the marker where I'm going to be cutting out. I'm going to drill some pilot holes along here so that I can get my bearings from up above. As far as cutting the hole for the roof vent, you can see my tape measure over here. There's a good 3/4 of an inch before we hit a hole. So we got some room to play with as far as cutting out the size of our vent opening. I'm going to cut it a little bit bigger. Maybe I'm going to try not quite 1/4 of an inch, but around there, just so it'll fit in easily. I'm marking outside our line. I'm sacrificing an old Phillips head screwdriver here. Going less than 1/4 of an inch outside of my line. And then I'm taking a small drill bit, which is 15/64. No use in trying it with a big one. You're more likely to break them. We'll go with the big bits later. I've taken our roof vent, lined it up with the holes that I drilled up from underneath, and marked the hole with a Sharpie. And even though I made the hole bigger as we had discussed from down below. When I look at this, I'm going to expand this out a bit more because I marked it from the garnish, and the garnish is actually narrower than the roof of the vent, because the vent, if you can see here, the vent goes on the outside of the garnish. So I'm going to expand that hole a bit bigger. I don't want to be cutting this thing a dozen times. If you've ever cut sheet metal, you know it's easier to cut it once than try to start taking some strips off it. So I'm just going to take my square, mark a little on the outside of each one of them, and we'll cut that out. At this point, I'm ready to cut the hole. The optimum tool you want to use for this is going to be a jigsaw. I, however, am going to use my reciprocating saw because I lent my jigsaw to a buddy and I forgot to get it back. At this point, I'm just going to let the camera roll. I get my video editor person to fast forward. Safety glasses and gloves are a must when you're doing this type of thing. The hole has been cut out. The fit of our vent, if you haven't seen it moving it around here, it's pretty good and tight. Definitely recommend go with the jigsaw. The reciprocating saw was way more work than it had to be. The instructions now tell us to drill out these holes along here. They say use a pilot, what does it say here? A pilot hole of 1/16. Well, what I do, I'm going to use a 1-inch screw because we're going to be putting putty on after this, and I want something long enough to go through. And a lot of times, if you're not sure, you hold your bit, and you want the bit to be slightly smaller than the screw. So I drilled a hole using this is a number 8 screw, inch long. And I drilled one hole right over here. Move my camera. Hopefully you can see it there. As you can see, as I start to screw that in, that's good and tight there. So I'm going to go with that for the size of the screws. So right now I'm just going to go along, now that I know everything is fit correctly, and just drill holes all in here. All of the holes have been drilled. Here, all around the edge. Now we have to put putty down. And also, just before I forget, when you're drilling your holes, kind of hold the vent down. That'll keep your drill bit centered nicely. Now we're going to install our putty strips. This is a strip of putty. This is great stuff. It never hardens. Now, I should have got a pair of those kind of medical gloves, you know, the type we're all wearing now because of COVID, because there's sharp edges along here. But I'm not getting off of this roof to go get them. So basically all you do is you lay it down like this, tear off the cover, and our instructions tell us wherever there's a ribbed area like this to use double the amount of strip. I've got my putty all laid out. I also was down off at the roof of this van and I decided to put my blue COVID gloves on. So if there's any place you think that might be a little low on the putty, just pretend like you're a kid and roll it out like I just showed there. Because once we screw this roof vent down, we're going to be running a bead of caulking around the whole thing anyway. So I want to have a fairly good thick coat of the putty, because I know as we go along here and screw it down, the vent is going to really compress onto that and avoid any leaks that way. Change my angle in the camera here so it'll be out of the way while I do this. The front of the vehicle is in that direction. Hopefully you can see I've gone pretty heavy with our putty, and I've gone really heavy on the inside edge, because as long as I can access these holes, see our holes here, then there's just going to be putty between the vehicle roof and our vent. And now I'm going to take the screws and I'm just going to start slowly going around, place them a little bit, and then try to tighten evenly. So I'm going to like tighten this side there a little bit and go back and forth like that. So we'll just fast forward through this. And because I've been known to do things before, as shown earlier, and screw up and forget little important details, we want obviously the hinge portion of our vent. In other words, we want the vent to open this way. The part that will open will be towards the rear of the vehicle. So here's our hinge. There's our hinge. We want that towards the front. The handle is here. I've removed the handle just to make it a little easier. Anyways, I'll place this thing. Make sure my wires fall down through there. Okay. And try not to move our putty too much. I've got all of our screws tightened down. There was a couple times where I found that the screws I were using weren't quite strong enough, so I went to a number 10 1-inch screw. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to run a bead of caulking all the way around here. This may not be too pretty at points, but I'm not really too concerned about what the roof of the van looks like. So we're going to run a bead of caulking around here. I'm going to put some over the screw heads. If you're not sure about how to use a caulking gun, I will put a link down below the video of how to use one, and I'll also put a link for Amazon of the RV. I'm using RV sealant here. Now, I'm obviously inside the van, and we just finished that caulking job. And before that dries, I'm going to get my bar. Without pushing on the fan, I want to make sure that the roof itself. I'm going to push against the metal there and get the roof back up. Just pop it out away from the fan. And it seems to be as it should be. Over here I can just, there. Let's pop that garnish in and see how that looks. Make a fair difference. Hide all those rough cut edges there. That doesn't look too bad. Here's the finished product. I'm going to show you inside here. I put the handle on and I'm on my way to camping for a week, so I'm gonna pretty this up later on. Here's our two connections, are positive and negative. This will reverse, but when you connect it incorrectly, it will make it'll go in the wrong direction. Anyway, here's how I'm going to power it with one of these power supplies. I have a video on this power supply. I'll share it in the links below. I'm going to run it off of this. I got that on, and turn the fan itself on. Press that little button. Anyway, I hope this video was helpful. Thanks for watching.